the executive director of the Police Foundation, Los Angeles Police Foundation, and one of her key directors to also come up here and sit with you. I think that this is an important example of
Ernie has one. Ernie has one. Ernie has one. Got it over here.
It's an important example of an organization doing all it can to help our department and the police officers of our department, and I thought it was really worthy of a discussion. It's an exciting donation, and we're interested in how they'll be used. And I know that you have a couple of the kits, and I would like to hold, if you're going to show what's in the kits to the media that's here, that you can do that as we exit.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Ready?
Take your time.
Well, good morning. My name's Commander Rick Webb, and I'm the Assistant to the Director of the Office of Administrative Services. And in 2008, terrorists from Pakistan invaded Mumbai and ultimately committed mass atrocities there. And as a result of that, American law enforcement, and in particular the Los Angeles Police Department, started looking at what we could do to mitigate some sort of operation like that. As we all know, we read in the newspapers about active shooter incidents and unfortunate mass killings in the United States and abroad. And American law enforcement and also American firefighters, medical community, are really taking a hard look at that particular set of circumstances and figuring out how exactly can we best respond to those types of situations. So a little bit after the Mumbai incident, I proposed and worked with Sandy Joe MacArthur, who's an assistant chief under the direction then of the chief of police, to develop what is known as MACTAC, which is the Multiple Assault Counterterrorism Action Capability.
Wait, say that again. It's called MACTAC?
MACTAC.
And
yes,
give
sir.
me the...
Multiple Assault Counterterrorism Action Capability. And there's kind of a backstory to how we got to that name, but it was designed. I was
However you got
driving
to
in
it, it's
Sandy.
scary. It scares me.
No, it was actually kind of silly, but
Okay.
ultimately we developed a program which is starting to spread throughout the country. I believe it's even being taught in Australia and other places. And really all it is dealing with active shooter incidents. Well, emanating out of that particular committee, it had to do with more than just tactics. It has to do with communications, operations, deployment schemes, and those types of things. But one aspect out of that, dating clear back to late 08 and early 09, was really how do we deal with the medical implications of these types of incidents? Because we know that when we send people into harm's way, they have to be able to protect themselves and even self-aid. I had a chance meeting with somebody who was a former Special Forces operator and a paramedic, and started learning about tourniquets and the application of hemostatic agents and self-aid and what is taking place overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq. And what happened over there is, back in, when we were all taught first aid, the idea of applying a tourniquet was really a decision, at least we were told at the time, to lose a limb, apply a tourniquet, lose a limb. And as we now know in the, pardon me, I forgot to turn this thing off. As we all know, in those operations, soldiers started using tourniquets and other medical methods to save themselves from extensive blood loss. And so that started bleeding over into American law enforcement, and we started looking at the application of tourniquets and pressure bandages and those types of things, and ultimately came up with what we think would be a very good individual first aid kit, or what is known as IFAC, for law enforcement. Now, other law enforcement agencies are starting to adopt this, and it's kind of even done on an ad hoc basis. So we started working on this program. Well, the other kind of parallel track to this is, I believe it was in 1998, when police officer Phil Cuesta was shot and killed in the line of duty, and I actually knew Phil quite well. At that time, an officer took her shirt off and tried to render aid to Phil, to no avail. And so I believe, and certainly the director of the Police Foundation can correct me, but I believe that was their first large purchase back in the 90s of first aid kits. Well, since the 90s, the technology certainly has changed because the first aid kits that were purchased back in the 90s didn't deal with the tourniquets or blood loss from the limbs. So the technology has changed, but certainly the desire has remained.
What else in the technology has changed? What will these kits be able to do that the other kits
Well, those other
weren't
kits,
able to?
yeah, those other kits are good. The other kits are a little bit big. We call them the pillow. They're relatively large, and they were designed at the time for the threat that was known to be out there, and that was law enforcement officers going out, having some sort of unfortunate exchange. An officer was hurt, and they were near their car. But what we know now from examining the incidents that we may be involved in is that police officers are going to be doing what we call going down range. And that means they're going to be very heavily engaged in dealing with the suspects who might be trying to harm our community. And they're not going to be able to get back to their car. So what these new kits are, they're actually smaller. They have a pressure bandage on it, which will actually apply pressure to the...
Do you have one? I mean, you don't have to open it up, but...
Sure. What they'll do is, you'll notice that these kits are quite a bit smaller. They're designed, and we don't want officers going around looking like they're soldiers or anything, but in the event that they have to go to an incident, what they'll do is they can actually attach this to their belt, and then they can go down.
You have another one there, so I can show the commissioner?
To Commissioner Sobron. They can actually go into the incident and
50
have
yarder,
this.
the Super Bowl weekend.
I've seen him throw. You don't want to. He wants to be a politician later. So. Anyway, so the larger kit that was designed, which was a very good kit and actually had a bit bigger bandages, it was not designed for the officer to carry it with them. So this kit, even though it's smaller, it will be designed for the officer to carry the kit with them. And what's inside this kit is similar to what was actually created in 1996 or 98, I believe, with the addition of, there's now pressure bandages, which actually just by the mere application of them, they provide a great amount of pressure to the extremity. There's a thing called, there's different tourniquets out there. This is actually called the Soft T tactical tourniquet, and it doesn't really matter which one it is. But this is designed, it's a big black piece of material with a windlass on it, and it actually can let the operator put this on a leg or an arm, and it'll actually staunch bleeding. There's a thing called occlusive dressings. This one happens to be a Fox Seal, but we're going with probably with another company. Should there be some sort of penetration to the chest, then I think in the old kit there's actually just a Vaseline pad, and we'd have to train officers to actually tape that onto the wound. What we're going to have here is actually a kit that it's a real sticky, gooey type thing, and all they have to do is put this on their wound and to stop a sucking chest wound. There's some prophylactic measures in here, such as gloves. There's a good pair of scissors and tape, and we're actually probably going to use duct tape. They say real men use duct tape for everything, and we believe that there's actually a new duct tape out there that'll be kind of an all-purpose tape for us. So,
what is the training necessary for someone to be able to utilize this to where you're happy with it?
Yeah, Commissioner, what happened, obviously, a few months ago I was here and there was an audit and we didn't do so well in first aid, CPR, AED, and we rolled out a whole program. We trained up about 60 of our supervisors, officers that went through actually LASD, Sheriff's Department training. They have a train-the-trainer for CPR, first aid, AED. So we get 60 there. Plus we also have another cadre of probably 30 or 40 that are already EMTs, which is at a higher level. So what we're doing is, beginning this month, we're rolling that first aid, CPR training out at the divisions. We have a whole schedule. I could show it to you if you want to do it. And what will happen is Post had already developed training on a website. They have basically a portal. So you sign on to Post and you go through this basically first aid CPR update. After they do that, and that takes several hours to do the refresher course, they then go to a practical application. So the area training coordinators, the staff, the cadre that we had trained up, will then bring them in a room probably for about an hour, and they'll go over all of the kind of the applications that they need
So
to
they're not
master.
becoming paramedics?
No, they're
being
not.
trained to use these kits
Yes.
specifically?
Yes, and the main purpose of the kit is actually if an officer, say your partner gets shot and you're going to try to do some quick life-saving type techniques. Obviously out in the field, if they ran into a citizen or something like that, they could choose to do that, but that's not the expectation because honestly, we are not EMTs. The level of training that they'll have is just to meet Post. It's a refresher.
What would a circumstance be under which an officer would use this on a citizen?
Well, they could. If they did roll up and somebody was bleeding and they chose to felt comfortable enough to actually try to do that, they could do it. There'd be the clear thing, though, is there's no expectation. Now, let me point out that even though we were out of compliance in the CPR over the last 3 or 4 years, we've probably given out 75, 80 life-saving medals. So the officers were actually doing that. They're jumping in even though they weren't required to do it, and they have been saving lives. So I think our officers would do the right thing, but they clearly are not trained to that level. So the expectation should not be there by the public.
Okay. Anything else you want to?
Yeah, the other thing, too, is that LA City is very fortunate to have the fire department, and these guys are world experts in dealing with large trauma events. And so it's our expectation, and part of the development of this kit was actually done in consultation with the fire department. But the fire department, they can get there very, very quickly, and they can deal with wounds much better than we can. But in the event, heaven forbid, that there is a very large-scale event, one of the things that we're doing is we're working with the fire department to do a thing called force protection, and I'm sure people have read about that in the news, and you might even have seen it in some demonstrations. So what will happen is police officers will actually team up with firefighters, and they'll take the firefighters into what we call the warm zone, so we can really get the tactical EMS people there on scene. Really, when law enforcement officers start getting involved in medical operations, that's really a dire last chance circumstance. But the fire department is really geared up to start doing this tactical EMS stuff, and I think they just recently published a paper. So we're actually training with the fire department for them to go downrange, and they actually have some guys that work in their tactical EMS unit that are special forces guys, and they're starting to push that out to their regular firefighters as well. So I think what we're starting to see is kind of a melding of or interaction between police and fire. And we certainly don't have issues that other cities do. I mean, we get along with, we're kind of like brothers. We might fight once in a while, but we're kind of like brothers. And so we're starting to work that in as well. So this is really kind of a dire circumstance. Maybe the firefighters can't get there because we're in a, what would be known as a hot zone. Last but not least, that's a chunk of money that the Police Foundation came up with. And I don't know what the life of a police officer is worth, but I know it's worth more than $352,652. And this is an extraordinary thing that members of the community would donate their money to do this. And, someday, somewhere, some police officer is going to be saved. And I think it's really important for us to recognize the Police Foundation. They just kind of work quietly behind the scenes and just hand over some money to us. This is a big deal, and so for what it's worth, it means a lot to me personally.
And also, I'm sorry, last week, another $100,000 grant was approved. I believe it came through here, and that was for all of the first aid CPR, and that's buying the mannequins and all the equipment we need. So thank you for that $100,000 too.
Cecilia, will you tell us about the Police Foundation and how did you do this, and who are your members, and
I'd like to make
speak
sure
right into the microphone.
Okay. I'd like to make sure to introduce a board member of the Los Angeles Police Foundation, Byron Reed. He has been a member for some time, and he can also speak to how the board feels about the work that they do on behalf of
Byron,
the
your
foundation
company
and for the
is
department.
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo.
Yes, sir.
Great. So the banks are still here supporting Los
Trying,
Angeles.
doing
All
our
these
best.
rumors about the banks splitting LA, there's still
us.
heart for,
Maybe the other banks.
yeah.
The Los Angeles Police Foundation is very proud of this particular grant because it does take us back to our roots. The very first grant that we awarded to the LAPD was for first aid kits in 1998. It was a grant in the amount of $125,000. It was the only grant in 1998. We're very pleased that we have been able to increase the giving to the department through grants last year totaling $2.8 million, of which this particular grant was a significant grant, but not the largest grant that we made to the department. This particular grant was meaningful to everyone because it was also our 15th year of existence, so it took us back. But it was a grant that we felt we could get community support for. So we actually utilized the first aid kits, and we call them individual first aid kits. I know they're being referred to as trauma kits now, as our end of the year appeal to the community. And we broke it down so that people would understand that literally for $44, you could save a life. The content of the kit itself costs $44. The packet that it's in is separate, and this grant allows us to purchase 2,400 of the containers for the materials. We will be working with the department for additional funding to do the balance of the kits. And also, we feel that it's important. The department comes to us with these needs. We address them. But in addition to that, we ask what else does the department need in order to make everything as effective and efficient for the department. And one of the things that was necessary was additional training. So there is a whole separate grant that deals with the training, specifically on these first aid kits. And the funder of that will be made public at some point. There's an embargo on the identity. It was a sole funder for that particular grant. So we feel that if the department has a need, we're in a position to address it, and we're grateful for these types of grants where we can engage the public very specifically with a request, which we did. We received about the equivalent of $20,000 restricted money coming in small contributions of $44. So that was
It's
significant.
nice. Nice. Byron, sir?
Nothing to add. Cecilia has done a phenomenal job in explaining the purpose and the reasoning behind the board.
Why are you on the Police Foundation?
I'm on the Police Foundation board because it's an organization that does great things for our community, and it's our responsibility as corporate citizens, as individual citizens, to make sure that our men and women of the police force have all the necessities that they need in order to go forward and protect our citizens. So my purpose of being on the board is just that, is to play a role in our society, our city, to make sure that we have a safe and sound city in which citizens can live. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. Chief?
You know, I just want to echo what Steve and the commission is putting forward, and thank you, the foundation and my board. You know, you make such a difference in not only the lives of police officers in Los Angeles, but in the lives of the community. I mean, I can go on, but from eliminating the rape kit backlog, to the trauma kits, to the service dogs, support of our animal cruelty task force, the things that we're able to do because of the backing of the foundation really make a difference in the quality of life in Los Angeles. And you need to know how important this particular program is. You know, this is funded entirely outside of the city's budget, which has been very difficult. I mean, the budget has been very difficult over the past 4 years, and within the budget, we would have never been able to get this in a timely fashion where it can save a life. And this will make all the difference. You know, police officers are faced with traumatic injury as a matter of course in their scope of employment, and this gives them the ability to do something about it, to stop the bleeding, stop a chest wound from intubating them so that they can survive. I think this is truly a magnificent thing that the foundation's done. So I want to thank you.
You know how much the chief is on your team. I also did, but just in case, he's been passing these out. These are your foundation.
Our new tagline,
Your
safer,
brochures,
stronger,
yeah.
together.
He was out on the corner doing this, and I asked Chief, "Come on in." But he made sure that he gave us each one of these. So, the chief is really on your team.
Great.
If you didn't know that. Commissioners,
Well, I really applaud the efforts of the foundation. I really applaud the efforts of the foundation, especially to target such essential needs of the police force, and also to pay so much important attention to improving the technology for officer safety. So.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much, but I want to echo what our commissioners and our chief has said. And I know Wells Fargo is not just at the Police Foundation, but they're everywhere in the community. They volunteer. They work with high-risk youth prevention programs. So I think Wells Fargo gets the issues in the community, not on the ground as well as on different levels. So thank you for that, and your staff has been great. Thank you.
and as you guys leave, look at the officers here and think about their families, and they're thinking about the other officers who these are impacting, and you should feel pretty good. And because of that, we're happy to validate your parking.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
We don't do that lightly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion for
Sure.
acceptance?
Yeah, motion
To receive the department's report and transmit to the mayor and city council.
motion approve item 7A.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, good. Thank you very much.
So much for being here.
Thank you. We are now on item 8, regular agenda items. 8A is a verbal presentation. Would a commissioner like to pull any other item?
I'd like to pull 8B.
Okay.
Or, yeah, 8B.
8B also.
Okay. Then we will begin with 8A, verbal presentation and update from the commanding officer and Community Police Advisory Board representative regarding community-initiated problem-solving, crime strategies, and other programs and goals within the Rampart area.
Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chief Beck, Mr. Tiffany, Commissioner Bustamante. My name is Captain Brian Pratt. I'm the proud commanding officer of the Rampart area. And alongside me is my partner in crime, my training officer, my mentor in the CPABs, Ms. Bertha Woolridge. I want to welcome her also.
Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Thank you for coming.
Just a short introduction about Rampart. I know the Commissioners knew Rampart CPAB began in 1993 out of necessity. Rampart, having been a flashpoint of extremely violent crime back in those days, was extremely necessary for Rampart to really engage with the community. Today, Rampart consists of only 5.6 square miles. Rampart has 312 personnel, 26 civilian, 273 sworn officers, and 13 reserve officers. And Rampart has an ever-growing population in excess of 164,900 at this time. Rampart has several well-known landmarks throughout the division: the newly restored Echo Park, MacArthur Park, and the Victorian Homes in Angelino Heights. It's also home to several consulate and international council offices, Southwestern Law School and Loyola Law School. In 2013, Rampart, through the help of the CPABs, met all the goals that we had set out to achieve. Rampart achieved a 9.4% reduction in Part 1 crimes for the year. We significantly exceeded the department goal of 3%, and Rampart also reduced its gang crime another 5.9%. And when you add the year prior, where we reduced it 21%, 21.0, Rampart in 2 years, through the assistance of CPAB and their funding and their guides, has achieved almost a 27% reduction in gang crime in Rampart. Our 2014 area goals, with the support of CPAB, again, we're going to shoot for another 3% reduction across the board in Part 1 crime. We also want to increase the community's participation in our public safety program focusing on traffic. It's a problem not only in Rampart but throughout the city of heavy traffic. And finally, we're working to expand our social media participation in Rampart youth and the community. I think if you see any kid running through Rampart nowadays, they have a smartphone. And it's much easier to communicate with them through Twitter and through Facebook and through Instagram now that I'm learning to get information out to them. Our CPAB annual goals for this coming year, we plan to increase our membership by 25%, which is 5 more people. We want to expand our participation between the CPABs and our business owners, especially the burgeoning businesses coming west down 6th Street from downtown. If you drive that area, you see it. We want to empower our new youth CPAB, which we're starting, our police advisory board with the youth, because they are such a conduit. If we put a good youth CPAB together, which is coming together, we already had our first meeting, they're a great conduit to those kids in the community. In dealing with those issues, we already put together a youth exercise program with our youth, our CPAB, and our cadets. It meets going to meet on a biweekly basis. We're starting a running program with the kids in the community. We've got support for 30 kids to transport them around, take them on different running trails, either MacArthur Park, Echo Park, even up to the Academy around Legion Park to run and exercise with them. We also have implemented a community computer labs where we're started in January. We have 2 classes going. That's being sponsored by Technology Business within the division. We're taking 24 kids, 12 at a time, and teaching them computer skills. We've got them committed for the first part, and hopefully we can get that at a quarterly commitment for them as we're working on that. Also, we have community small business classes being given to us by Chase Bank. That is another 20 positions that Chase has given us to teach young kids small business skills. So that's something we're pushing. And hopefully we get that on a quarterly commitment also. I'll let Bertha talk about what she does with the police commissioner here.
Thank you.
Forgot my glasses.
That's okay. Wait a minute, aren't you guys wearing the same, were you wearing the same glasses?
Yes.
Are those the ones that he was wearing? Oh, okay. I like that. That's good partnership.
My name is Bertha Woolrich. I am in Rampart Division since 1982. Come to Rampart in 1961, so I've been around for a long time. I was 32 years volunteer at Rampart Division and 20 years of CPAB since the beginning of our CPAB. The mission of advisory board is to promote and to assist with community policies, to discuss how the citizens of the community of Rampart area can possibly affect the quality of life within within our community. We meet the first Thursday of the month at Good Samaritan Hospital, 637 Lucas Avenue, on 2nd floor, and it will be at the Sequoia Room. Rampart CPAB consists of 20 board members. Majority of our membership assists in other volunteer activities and programs within the Rampart area. Senior lead officers are in attendance at each meeting. We coordinate guest speakers every month to provide important information to the board members to take back their their respective areas. We have the following programs, following committees: the crime committee, the traffic committee, the youth committee, and the membership committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Bertha. When addressing the crime committee is very simple. There's a chairman within the police CPABs, and I'm able to not only brief them every month on what's going on in the division, but also give them trends and tips to certain crime trends that are happening in the division. The Rampart's big focus is property crime, as it is much across the city, and on a monthly basis, I'm sending them stuff about auto-related crimes, auto burglaries. I also have them signing into my Twitter account, where I can send them daily information about auto crimes. I just posted one yesterday about auto crimes within the Rampart area. Our traffic committee, as with the department, our focus is free-flowing, safe traffic in the city. With the implementation of loaning officers from the divisions to the central traffic area to focus on specific traffic conditions in the city, I've also appointed, on each watch, there's a traffic liaison sergeant. His responsibility is to monitor the traffic conditions in the division, and also to liaison with central traffic to make sure the assets that we have there are working within Rampart, especially along the Alvarado corridor in that area, to ensure traffic is much safer and pedestrian safety is much safer. Big thing, big push I'm working on at Rampart is our youth committees. Really focused on engaging the youth. We have our youth CPAB, which has started. really trying to inspire them to follow us on social media. I mean, it's Facebook, I think, is not as popular anymore. It's really Twitter and Instagram. So we have signed up on both of those accounts. We have those up and running.
How do you get the kids to think you're cool enough to where they want to follow you? I mean, you just don't look that followable. Neither do I.
I think it's a combination. I think we need to continue to reach out to them. We work through the, especially with our UCPAVs, my cadets, my pals.
I see.
It's kind of planting the seed there.
And their buddies, they get their buddies?
They get their buddies
That's
to
a
follow
good
their
idea.
buddies, and if they click follow, then the biggest thing is getting them to click follow, on Twitter and stuff like that. So mine's grown to like 172 followers already.
Good.
So hopefully we can just keep pushing that. And I'm learning Instagram. My son is this, hey Brian, you get on Instagram. I'm trying to learn that one, and maybe we'll do that with the kids also, because they seem to communicate much more on Instagram
Yeah.
now than they do even Twitter and
Yeah,
Facebook.
good.
So, on that.
Well, I'm going to tell my kids to follow you.
Some of the CPAP accomplishments we've had this year, just to highlight them quickly, our National Night Out back in August, it's the first Tuesday of August. We had over 4,000 people in Rampart Station. We had virtually every elected leader come through the division on National Night Out. It was just a rousing success, and that's to Bertha's credit and the CPAPs. It took 4 months of planning to put that together. We have our annual open houses where in November and in October, where thousands of community members came and met their officers. The officers work for them around the station. We had our Thanksgiving Day turkey giveaway in conjunction with the community and gang group Aztec Rising, where we had over 300 turkeys given away at the station. And also the Blind Children's Christmas giveaway and our Rampart Station giveaway. We gave close to 4,000 gifts in the front of the station were given to the community members. Each and every one of these efforts by the CPABs, this requires an immense amount of work, community outreach, reaching out with the business vendors, and just plain hard work is what it comes down to, working with them. And they have accomplished a lot. And Bertha is just the continual spearhead of this. I joked earlier that she's my training officer. She truly is.
I bet.
Our community involvement with CPABs, with their support, they're very supportive of our Neighborhood Watch program, of our over 34 Neighborhood Watch groups, and we're pushing that daily to grow more. They're very supportive of our Community Police Academy. We just started January 21st. We had our Community Police Academy with 12 attendants joining that. So that is in progress, and that's all through the support with the CPAB. Our community involvement, they're very supportive of our Reserve Officer program. We have 13 very active, energetic reserves at Rampart. They're very enforcement-oriented. They work patrol a lot. One of my reserves is appointed judge. Mr. Frank Taubman was promoted to judge in the Superior Court. I have a district attorney and a chief of police from a small city up north who all work in our Reserve Corps. We have a very energetic Rampart chaplain that the CPAB supports, Father Michael Cooper, who is not only inspirational and working around the division, but he also works with us with community issues. We have over 73 members in our Rampart Police PALS program. PALS is the younger groups of kids that before they go into cadets, they're the ones going to be participating in the jogging program. And also, PALS supports our karate program. We have a Monday, Wednesday karate program at Rampart Station in our large community room, which really is a community room. And we have over 80 kids participating out of Rampart community in our karate program there. CPAB is also very supportive of our cadets, over 90 cadets we have, plus the 22 we recently have in the Cadet Academy. They're very supportive of that. They're very supportive of our student volunteer program with the 72 student volunteers we have at Rampart Station working in and around the station. They're very supportive of that also. In closing, moving forward in 2014, we continue to push. We're going to grow our CPABs by 25%, fully activate our youth CPAB program. Bertha is also involved in our booster program. We have our boosters at Rampart Station. We want to grow that by 5, and we've already added 3 who've given substantial financial support to the boosters. And with that, with CPABs, they're able to do more for the station and the officers in the station. And again, sir, the push is going to be social media. The chief in the Office of Operations has allowed us to assign 2 officers to full-time social media duty at the stations, and that's going to be the push. Just getting them trained up to speed, finding that propeller head, you say, who's very good and savvy at that stuff. That's what we found. That's what we have in place. And again, is to tap into the youth of the community. Rampart's a very young, youthful community. It's the crossroads for many people coming to this country. And the key is to work with the youth. Again, I said everyone has a cell phone. So, in closing, I really invite the whole police commission to follow Rampart Station on Facebook, to look for myself on Twitter and hopefully Instagram once I figure that out.
What's your handle?
It's at Rampart Captain on Twitter. So please follow it. And finally, I invite each one of you to come and do a ride-along in Rampart, see the changes in the community, because it's really a beautiful community. It's come so far, and this is my third tour, my third fortunate tour in Rampart, and it's changed. It's really a beautiful place to be. Commissioner Figueroa, I look forward to you going on your ride-along. I invite all the commissioners to come do a ride-along in Rampart. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Be there February 20th.
We got a car for you, ready to go.
Are you going at nighttime?
Nighttime.
Yeah, she's messing around.
It's the best,
I guess
the
that's
action
what-
at night.
Thanks so much. I teach at Loyola Law School, so I'd like to encourage some representation from our campus, our academic community.
Absolutely.
So we'll try to facilitate that.
I have a good friend who teaches her also, so I'm going to touch base.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to item 8B, Department's Report dated January 16, 2014, relative to the Department's Manual Sections 1/115 Management Principles and 1/240.10 Use of Force, revised.
I think that we'll just do the question. I don't think you have to really make a report, but any,
I pulled this item since some were new, and to know some of the history behind the change in policy would be helpful, since the report indicates that it's an update based on Graham v. O'Connor, and just to hear something about the background would be helpful.
Absolutely, Commissioner. My name is Dwayne Hayakawa. I'm the commanding officer of Planning and Research Division. Our department manual is quite extensive. You've probably seen it. It's quite large and has multiple references to the term use of force. And it was pointed out to us, and most recently in the Inspector General's most recent report dated June 11, 2013, the review of non-categorical use of force investigations. There were several manual sections that were not consistent as to the standard for our term of or the application of the use of force, which should be objectively reasonable. It is stated that way in our policy on 1 Solidus 556 of the manual, but in certain other subsections within the manual, it was not quite so stated. So this was our way to rectify that situation. One of the other manual sections, as stated, 1 Solidus 240.10, was actually the a section for public contacts and how we interact with people, and sometimes we do have to use the force, and it was stated as reasonable and necessary. So we fixed that. We actually made the change. The other section that we're changing is 1 Solidus 115.30, where it's a management principle, minimum use of force. And just to give you some history about that, this management principle was one of 20 management principles that's been with the department for many a year. Our forefathers put in there. It's kind of like their constitution back in the old days. So instead of actually changing the actual verbiage in that management principle, we put a note on the top of the subsection to show that this is part of our history. It's more for historical reference of our guiding principles that got us here today, and left the verbiage the same. I'm sure you've toured many of the department's facilities and stations in the areas, and you've probably seen these 20 management principles on the walls and the hallways around there. So to change that piece of our history was kind of something we were a little reluctant to do. We wanted to still live with them, by them, have them in our hearts, but yet didn't. But wanted to make sure we made it very clear on reading the manual that you want to see the policy, you go to the appropriate section, and that's so stated on our revisions.
That's really helpful, and obviously these changes are completely uncontroversial, but I think that providing that historical background gives us some illustration of the importance, also the role of the Inspector General's office to update or ensure the updating of these legal standards. And so before the objectively reasonable standard, what was the previous language?
It was, as stated in some places, reasonable and necessary.
Reasonableness.
Until Graham and Connor versus Connor came out, the U.S. court case, and we all adopted that as the legal standard.
And is there some instruction to the officers as to what the standard, objectively reasonable, actually means, or how to interpret that standard in a live situation?
They get training throughout, beginning at the academy, and it's reinforced through in-service training at roll calls, perishable skills training. It's very frequent. I can't quote all the times and places they get it, but it is consistent throughout their whole career.
Thank you. It's
Thank you
helpful.
very much. Will you, do we have a motion for,
Sure. A motion to approve item 8B?
all those in favor? Aye. Good, thanks for the explanation.
Thank you. We are now on item number 9, public comment. We have no comment cards. We will now go to item number 10, closed session items. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 10A, 1, 2, and 3 in accordance with various government codes.
Great.
And so on and so on.
Closed session, item number 10A1 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 10A2 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. And in closed session, item number 10A3 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. Mr. President, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, I'm Christy Odom in Los Feliz. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel. Would you like a mustache for that?
Hello, I'm Anna Marcos, and welcome to this special report, Watts, Fighting for Peace. We wanted to do this report to take a new look at an area that's often in the headlines only when there's trouble. The Watts riots in 1965, murders, gang, and criminal activity. But there's something else happening in Watts now, something else worthy of headlines. Violent crime and homicide rates have hit record lows, dips even more pronounced than the rest of the city. In this report, we take a closer look at what residents and police are doing. Screams of joy and victory echo through Imperial Courts. Cynthia Mendenhall, known as Sister Soldier of Watts, has just helped her 17-year-old neighbor get out of gangs and into a private school.
Oh, yeah? I snatched him so the devil couldn't be mad at me. I snatched him away from the gang. I snatched him away, and I feel good in my soul. He got hope.
For Sister Soldier, peace and violence live side by side. She is a community activist, a gang interventionist, and a former gang member. She lost 2 of her own sons on these streets.
It's time for us to take community back. Not the politicians, not LAPD. The community to make a stand and fight for the kids and the youth in this community. And we are suffering here.
There's 2 more kids to save now, her grandsons who lost their fathers.
I love my granny because she do so much for us. I feel good.
Why?
Because I'm with my granny.
The 3 major public housing developments in Watts, Nickerson Gardens, Imperial Courts, and Jordan Downs, were the birthplace of the Watts riots in 1965. They have long been a hotbed of drugs, gangs, and all-out war with police. But something is changing in this neighborhood. Violent crime is plummeting to record lows.
In Jordan Downs, violent crime went down in 2012 53%. In Nickerson Gardens, 72%, and Imperial Courts, 75%.
The only numbers that we see that are going up are property crime. People reporting, burglaries from their cars. But we give that credit to the fact that people want to talk to us now. They come out and actually want to report crimes.
The 3 housing projects together have seen only 2 murders in 2 years. In the 10 years before that, there were 69 homicides, about 7 a year. Residents are now talking to the cops, Both sides share information when crimes happen.
Some of these developments, you couldn't even come inside of them, especially at nighttime. If you did come in, you had to come in with several units. But now they have us out there each day. You have 10 officers out there doing foot beats. They have somebody to go to. The officers have created a rapport with the community.
So what's made the difference? For one thing, the Community Safety Partnership, a joint effort by police, city leaders, residents, and the Housing Authority of the City of LA.